Hello everyone and thanks for dropping by the video. It is now day 2 of season 6 of GBL and I just wrapped up a stream where I played 55 battles with various teams, and I wanted to go over a 5-0 set that I had towards the end of rank 7, and I wanted to go over this in a little bit more in-depth manner, so it's not going to be the usual short video shoutcast that I have, but instead we'll take a look at each individual matchup and especially going over the player POV or point of view. In this case, I'll be running a pretty meta line. This is my rank 10 team from season 4 of GBL when MMR was still in effect. So this team was able to go on a 9-1 run at 29-29 all the way past 3000 and to secure rank 10. And this team is made by J. Robin Stacks and was also played by Super Saiyan Sensei as well as Panic. I think all of us got to rank 10 at some point in the season with this team, so it is a very strong team featuring 3 of the meta monsters, Azumarill, Abomasnow, and Alolan Marowak. So a couple notes before we start. I am running Ice Beam and Play Rough on Azumarill. Abomasnow has the generic moveset of Powder Snow, Energy Ball, and Weather Ball Ice. And on my Marowak, I am running Shadow Ball instead of Shadow Bone. So the main reason is because this team, Alolan Marowak, kind of serves as a safe swap of sorts, and with the Shadow Ball instead of Shadow Bone, most people are expecting a Shadow Bone when you bring in your Alolan Marowak, and they're very unlikely to shield that first attack. And in a lot of situations, that Shadow Ball winds up dramatically swinging all the matchups that you're going to be playing it in. Even if you have a negative matchup, the Shadow Ball can still chunk and create that health advantage or create that pressure on their health. So I think this is a really good choice right now if you want to climb. Obviously we have Kalos Pokemon coming up and that's going to dramatically change the meta, but it's going to take a while for people to figure out what the optimal teams are going to be, and even then the Kalos starters are not going to have their community day moves, so it's going to be a while before Kalos Pokemon are really ingrained into the meta. So this is a pretty safe team. I only played this for one set on stream, but it was a 5-0 and I decided to go on to a different team just to shake it up and have some fun. But let's go over this 5-0 set. And I'll be going over, like I said, all the decisions that I'm going to be making, as well as what I am thinking when I'm in the battle. So obviously when we are in battle, we have a lot of time at the beginning of the screen, or at the beginning of the battle, a couple of seconds of countdown time, and then we have time to think as we're charging up our moves and as we are waiting to make a decision on whether we're going to be shielding or not. So let's go ahead and get into the battle. I'm going to be probably slowing down and and stopping the video footage from time to time, and we're going to go straight into it. Hopefully I just start the battle here. Okay, going to get into our first match here. So you can see here I'm rank 6 right now, 2 wins away from rank 7 and playing against rank 5, so definitely some hidden MMR action, but overall still played a bunch of solid trainers as I got later into the day. So the first matchup that we have head-to-head is Azumarill versus Toxicroak. So in this particular matchup, when you're opening up and you're thinking about it, you can't really swap out of this matchup, right? So you have Azumarill and you have Alolan Marowak that can kind of go toe-to-toe with Toxicroak. Toxicroak, a very strong Pokemon, has access to Mud Bomb as well as Sludge Bomb, and you're obviously not bringing in your Abomasnow against that. And there's no reason to switch here, because if you lose switch advantage, you pretty much lose the game. Abomasnow has very little play against Toxicroak, and there is no reason to swap here. You just have to stay in, or you have to hope that they swap and you can counter swap. So in this case, Toxicroak actually has a pretty decent matchup against Azumarill. Its counter is going to be charging energy much faster than the bubble, and it's basically going to be a bait game depending on how the Toxicroak wants to play it. So I would actually put the advantage here to the Toxicroak, because overall the nuke that they have in Sludge Bomb is going to dramatically shift this matchup as opposed to the Ice Beam and the Play Rough, both of which do neutral damage to Toxicroak of the Azumarill. So think about it in terms of Azumarill doing constant damage, and then Toxicroak wildly swinging this matchup depending on what moves it lands and what decisions that the Azumarill player actually makes. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with the video. You can see here I'm counting the counters that are coming out. So and I'm going to make a decision here to throw the Ice Beam and not let him get a counter through, and I'm going to be the one applying the pressure first. So I know that on pacing though, Toxicroak can reach 2 Sludge Bombs in the time that you reach 2, or I believe in the time that you can reach an Ice Beam and a Play Rough. So I have to make a decision here. And at this point, he obviously has enough energy for the Sludge Bomb, and nothing has been really revealed yet, because if you're the Toxicroak player, you're probably shielding the first attack that's coming out of Azumarill anyways. But for me here, I get the feeling that he is going to be throwing the Sludge Bomb, mainly because he's shielded, and then he's also farming up a lot of energy, has shown no desire to swap out of this matchup. So I'm going to go ahead and make the decision to shield here, and it is the Sludge Bomb. So as soon as this connects with the shield and I'm aware of the situation, I now know that my opponent is pretty energy dry, which actually opens up an opportunity for me to fire another Ice Beam. So I'm going to be able to get there relatively quickly. I'm going to fire another one, and this is where my opponent has to make the decision. So because I called the bait correctly, and because now the onus is on the Toxicroak player to decide, I've shifted the momentum of this match in my favor dramatically. And depending on what my opponent decides to do here, whether he shields this Ice Beam or not, this is going to dictate what his actions are going to be. So here I go for the Ice Beam, and I am going to get a shield here after I charge. So at this point, I know that my opponent is thinking a couple things. So the first thing that he's thinking is, well, I can go for another Sludge Bomb, and if he goes for the Sludge Bomb and I shield, then he's pretty much dead, right? Because now we have enough energy to get to another Ice Beam. We're going to be able to KO him, and although shields are going to be down, we're going to have a pretty healthy Azumarill here. And then the other option here is, if I don't shield, then he's going to be shieldless and going against 2 Pokemon in unknown. So if he's not sure here what he's going to be doing, he's probably going to try to get a shield, which is going to be kind of the safer play. And we're going to take a look here. So shields are down, and I am 2 bubbles away from my Ice Beam when my opponent decides to throw here. So I have a decision to make, and I have to think about, again, what the psychology of my opponent is. And at this point, I've already made the decision in my head that I'm going to take the shield advantage. And the main reason is because I have an Alolan Marowak, and although the matchup is not great, at the same time, if this is a Sludge Bomb, then I'm going to be able to come in with a Alolan Marowak, and at the very least, I might eat a Mud Bomb, but I'm going to come out of that matchup with a Shadow Ball. And any kind of opening with Shadow Ball, unless you're playing a normal type, it's going to be really bad news for whatever Pokemon comes in. And I kind of already know that he's got 1 counter user on the team, so it's kind of unlikely that he has like a Vigoroth. He might have a DD, but DD is going to be very weak to Shadow Ball. So I don't really anticipate that my opponent wants to lead this matchup and not at least get shields down. But either way, I'm okay with it, because now I have the dominant position. I don't have to worry about too much, and I'm going to go ahead and let this charge attack hit me. And right here, opponent fires the Mud Bomb, and as soon as he fires the Mud Bomb, I am instantly aware that his plan is to try to get shields down. And you know, mainly because he's going for the bait here. He has enough for 2 Mud Bombs, so there's actually no reason for him, or there was a reason for him to bait here to try to get shields down. But now he's just going to unload his energy, and he's going to call this this matchup complete. So I'm going to take the Mud Bomb here, and he's going to counter me a little bit more, and we're going to CMP tie on the Ice Beam versus the Mud Bomb. And here, I'm not going to shield again. This might KO, and it's pretty IV dependent, but as you can see here, I survived with a sliver of health. So depending on how good your Azumarill is, it could vary in this matchup, but mine is actually not that great. It's a very low rank compared to what the stat optimized versions of Azumarill are. And because it's CMP tie, he can't swap out, and I can go ahead and fire this Ice Beam, and I come out of this matchup with not only a shield advantage, but with switch advantage. So this is very huge. And mainly it is kind of played out because I did call the bait at the beginning, and I was also very aggressive. Instead of waiting for my opponent to throw first and potentially being on the back foot, I decided to go ahead and throw the Ice Beam first to apply the pressure. And because my opponent did shield, I had a feeling that he was going to be going for the Sludge Bomb and trying to get either shields down or trying to try to KO me. So at this point in time, I'm feeling pretty good. Shields are down, but my opponent brings in, as you can see on the top right corner, a Galarian Stunfisk. And this is where I have to make a decision. So I'm kind of waiting the switch timer out, and I'm obviously going to be coming in with the Abomasnow, but the fear right now is I have to figure out what is potentially in the back. So you have a fighter who is going to be covering steel types. You have another anti-steel, anti-Bastodon, anti-tank kind of Pokemon in Galarian Stunfisk. So my assumption right now is that there's a flyer somewhere in this team comp. It has to be in the back, right? And what is really great about this is that I have Abomasnow kind of queued up already, and both these Pokemon have poor matchups against Galarian Stunfisk, but I have the shield. So I'm going to go ahead and come in with Marowak, and with the knowledge that this Stunfisk is going to have to, in the one shield or 1 versus 0 shield scenario, the Stunfisk is definitely going to struggle, and I might have to watch for a sack swap on the Shadow Ball, but I'm going to come with Alolan Marowak, go straight for the Shadow Ball, and try to take out this Galarian Stunfisk, knowing that a Shadow Ball and the Fire Spins and a Bone Club would be able to KO this Galarian Stunfisk. So I'm counting the Mud Shots, and right as I reach the Shadow Ball, my opponent, or get close to the Shadow Ball, my opponent hits 8 Mud Shots right there. So this is enough for an Earthquake, and it also could be a Rock Slide. So I have to think about what my opponent is thinking about as well. And in this particular case, considering what is going on and what I'm thinking about that he has in the back, Abomasnow can handle basically all the flyers except for Skarmory, but it's very unlikely that he's playing like a fighter double steel. It doesn't seem to really fit here in this case. So I have to make a decision here, and I think that the only win condition that my opponent has crafted after losing switch advantage and shield advantage is that he has to go for a nuke here. He has to go for the Hail Mary here to get past, to hope that I don't shield. So I'm going to call the Earthquake bait, or I'm going to call the Earthquake here. And that's exactly what he does. So my opponent here makes the correct play. So this is not a poor play for my opponent. He should be going for the Earthquake, because the win condition in this case is that he gets that he Earthquakes me and I don't shield, right? Because then that would put all of the pressure on him, or all the pressure on me. So I do make the call here to shield, and now I know that because he's energy dry, I can definitely Shadow Ball him, and even if he decides to go for another Earthquake, which I believe he can reach in the time that it would take me to try to get energy for a Bone Club. Even if he does that, my Abomasnow now can kind of come in and get some free farm, and then have Weather Balls ready for whatever flyer that he potentially has. So here, shield, go straight for the Shadow Ball. He's almost, I think he got 2 Mud Shots in right there. I'm gonna go for the Shadow Ball here, and this is gonna deal a ton of damage. And I actually identify here that I have an opportunity to fast move down if he gets scared and decides to pull the trigger on a Rock Slide. So at this health, actually, I'm not even sure if he could make the Earthquake. Shadow Ball did a little bit more than I thought it would. And I'm going to commit to the potential farm down here, and my opponent gets scared right now and throws energy. So at this point, I know that it's unlikely to be an Earthquake. It feels very, very early. So if I survive this Rock Slide and I farm this guy down, I'm throwing a Shadow Ball at whatever comes in, and I'm going to let Abomasnow clean up. And I think my opponent was probably hoping for a CMP tie, but I've already committed to the farm down, right? And he switches into a Drifblim. So it was a flyer. However, it is the one flyer that doesn't want to see an Alolan Marowak. In this case, I have the Shadow Ball ready. This one-shots, or almost one-shots, and then just for safety, I bring in the Abomasnow to Powder Snow down for the win here. So right there, that was a pretty balanced team composition. I can definitely understand why my opponent is running that, and it also makes sense that he also didn't swap out of the opening matchup, so he definitely took the risk to come in and try to get either shields down. Makes sense. He has a Shadow Ball user, and then he has a Galarian Stunfisk. It would greatly benefit him if I had no shields, and if he would have gotten that last shield from me, probably a good chance that he would have won that match, because G-Fisk would have done very, very well against my backline, and then the Drifblim actually takes on Azu pretty well. Drifblim can reach a Shadow Ball before Azu can reach an Ice Beam. Based on energy, of course, I had a little bit of residual energy from the Toxicroak matchup, but overall that could have been a really bad situation for me. So let's go ahead and move on to the second match. Okay, let's go ahead and get into the second battle here. Going against another rank 5. And we're going to be leading Azumarill into Unova Stunfisk. So it's been a while since I've played this matchup. The last time I played this matchup in a common or in a repeated sense was actually season 3, or maybe it was, yeah, actually season 2. It was right before Galarian Stunfisk got released, and Unova Stunfisk was making a huge uprising in Great League. It's very, very strong against the Steels, and also has a pretty decent matchup against Azumarill. But it does depend on whether the Stunfisk is carrying Thundershock or Mudshot. So the Thundershock actually does still generates quite a bit of energy, but the Thundershocks will add up against Azumarill, and it makes that matchup a lot less comfortable. And I know that right now, Azu and Unova Stunfisk, depending on the shielding scenarios, but usually in even shield scenarios, Azu should win this. Because although I do get outpaced in terms of charge moves, the Ice Beams are going to be dealing super effective damage to the ground type, and that is going to help me secure the victory. So, and then also the Bubbles are doing super effective damage. So I know that if this is not a Thundershock user, then I have a pretty good chance of winning this opening lead matchup. But I also have to be cognizant of what he potentially has in the back. And as we kind of start counting down, I see an Unova Stunfisk, or I see a Galarian Stunfisk even nowadays. Again, assume that there's a flyer in the back somewhere, but we don't know what kind of flyer it is. And the health of my Azumarill is actually pretty important, because Azumarill does fairly decently against most of the flyers in the meta, even including things like Skarmory. Obviously has a bad matchup against Tropius, but being able to carry Ice Beam and being able to threaten health like that, obviously a very useful Pokemon. So I'm gonna get started, and I'm gonna start charging Bubbles, and I actually don't know the counts exactly from this matchup because I've kind of just forgotten them over time. But I know that regardless of what charge move the Stunfisk is carrying, it's going to be able to outpace me on my first Ice Beam. So I have to kind of decide here whether I want to shield or not, and it's going to be a Discharge. Discharge probably does about 40%, 40-45% of Azumarill's health, and Ice Beam, of course, is going to deal massive damage to the Stunfisk. So I'm going to go ahead and make a decision to let this first one go. It's going to hit me for quite a bit. I'm still on the green. I'm going to farm a little bit of extra energy, trying to deny the Mud Shot from him so he doesn't get an extra fast move in, throw the Ice Beam, and as expected, he's probably going to shield here. So now, I know that the Stunfisk is going to reach another charge move here momentarily, and at this point, we're going to get into the one shield scenario. So the 2 shield scenario is a little more tricky, but the 1 shield scenario, both Pokemon will reach 2 charge moves in the 1 shield, and Azumarill will win the 1 shield if this player decides not to shield. So in this case, I'm fully expecting a Discharge to come through next, and I'm going to be able to get to the Ice Beam. So really, the onus is on my opponent to make a decision whether he wants to shield or not. If he goes into 2 shields, then I have to make a decision, because then the pressure is on me to figure out what I'm going to be doing in that particular matchup. So I'm going to go and... Again, he lets the free bubble go through, so this actually catches me up a little bit, and I'm going to shield this attack here. And again, he Mud Bomb baits me, so this is pretty interesting. I don't know if it was worth it for him to do that, because if I would have let that charge move go, I still would have had the opportunity to fire the Ice Beam. So he still would have had to make a decision on whether he wanted to stay in or not. And the Mud Shots don't do a whole lot to Azu, so if I was just focused on this lead matchup and whether I wanted to win that or come out of that with a win or not, then that would have been really bad for my opponent. So I think that Discharge and Mud Bomb have similar energy costs. We'll have to go look that up after this, but I thought it was really surprising that my opponent decided to bait there. So I'm going to go for the Ice Beam here, hoping to either get a second shield, in which at that point I would let Azumarill go and bring in my Abomasnow, but my opponent decides not to shield. So this is fantastic, winning the opening matchup here, being at shield parity, but also having, half health Azumarill, tanky Pokemon, most definitely able to get to another charge move, regardless of what is able to come in. and my opponent brings in a fairy type, and I can see it in the top right corner. It's a Clefable. So at this point, I have to make a decision again, and I obviously not going to swap, but I have to start thinking about what flyer is potentially in the back. And there's a couple situations where this could go really, really poorly for me, because I know that my Azumarill is going to go down to this Clefable no matter what. So I'm obviously bringing in a Alolan Marowak to follow up onto this fairy, but if the flyer in the back is a Skarmory, then we could potentially be in trouble. So because Abomasnow can't really handle that 1v1, or if it's maybe like a Mandibuzz, I feel like that would also cause some problems because of its tankiness and its ability to wall Alolan Marowak. So I'm gonna get to this Ice Beam here. Probably should have gone for Player Off. Wasn't sure if I was gonna make it, but obviously, you know, in retrospect, I definitely could have. Let's fire the Ice Beam. My opponent says not to shield here, and then he's gonna be able to charm us down. Was cognizant to not allow the charm to get through right there, and now I'm gonna be making a decision here. So the thing is, if he has a Skarmory in the back, and he's able to damage me with Clefable enough, then I'm kind of in a rough spot. But I'm going to make a decision. Obviously, I'm going to come in with Marowak, but really nervous about what he has right there. So, switch time, we're going down. Marowak coming in. And my opponent's going to reach a charge move right now. So, first of all, got a free Fire Spin through, which is fantastic. My opponent here has access to Psychic, Meteor Mash, and Moonblast. And at the time that I'm playing this, I'm thinking that Psychic is definitely gonna hurt. It's gonna chunk, but it's the only move that's not not resisted by Alolan Marowak. But if he throws a Meteor Mash or if he throws a Moonblast, I'm gonna be able to survive that with relatively decent health. So I'm gonna make a decision here not to shield. And my opponent fires a Moonblast. Now this is like kind of a scary moment because, thinking about it, if he had a Skarmory in the back and I got debuffed, then it kind of changes the matchup a little bit, and it kind of depends on what this how the Skarmory decides to play it. But in the one shield scenario, debuffed, I wasn't really sure if a Alolan Marowak could still win that. But my opponent fires this, I don't shield. A little bit of lag right there. Takes about 30% health, still does quite a bit of damage, and my opponent does have the Skarmory. So knowing this, I'm gonna go straight for the Shadow Ball right there. So I really don't like baiting with Alolan Marowak in the event that there are flyers, because if he decided to no shield this, then the Bone Club would literally do no damage, right? So I always go for the nukes, and I kind of encourage everyone to do that as well, just so that you can maintain the energy or maintain the energy efficiency. And my opponent here, his win condition was actually to call the Bone Club bait, and obviously that wasn't going to be the case. But now my opponent's in trouble because the Fire Spins are going to be adding up. And had he shielded this, probably still would have been in a really, really tricky spot for him, but he would have had a much better chance of winning. And now I know that with this amount of health pressure here, I can continue to go for Fire Spins, and I can actually one-shield Farm Down, which is very dangerous for him, right? So he's going to try to get to a Sky Attack here, but it's a little bit too late. I'm able to shield this up. Obviously let this attack come through, and I'm going to be able to come into the Farm Down. At this point, I know that when the Clefable comes back in, whether or not it's going to be able to charm me down or not, we're actually going to survive the Sliver of Health. So knowing that the Clefable couldn't reach another charge move, even if it charmed me down, I can come in with Abomasnow and snipe it. I was in a pretty safe spot right there. So again, 2-0 in this set, and we're gonna move on to the third one. But yeah, you guys can see that in general, there's a lot of patterns with what you're going to see in the lead, and especially what you're going to see in the safe swap. You can always assume that if, Galarian Stunfisk being a fantastic cover for those flyers, and then obviously the flyers are fantastic covers for the Galarian Stunfisk, right? Because Galarian Stunfisk or even a Nova Stunfisk, somewhat weak to grass, and then the Galarian Stunfisk is weak to fighting, both of which are going to be covered by those flyers. Okay, so getting into the third match, have Azumarill and into Obstagoon. So this this matchup is going to be very similar to the Toxicroak matchup. So Obstagoon mostly has the preferred moveset of Counter, Night Slash, and Gunk Shot. I've seen some folks carry Hyper Beam as well. However, I feel like Gunk Shot it's kind of there as a, you know, it only has one job, right? It's take out fairies and take out Azumarill. So most people are preferring the Trash Can, and this is going to play very similarly to the Toxicroak matchup, where the pressure is on me at the beginning to call the bait, and I have to make that decision here. So in this case, against Obstagoon, I play a little bit differently. I farm up to a Play Rough, and then I throw the Ice Beam first. And this is going to tell me a lot of information, because the Obstagoon, if they're counting my bubbles, they're going to know that I'm potentially at Play Rough energy, and they're going to have to shield. So this is a little bit different than the Toxicroak matchup, where both moves that I'm potentially firing are going to be dealing neutral damage. In this case with the Obstagoon, there's a much higher risk, where at the same time there's, you know, again, he's going to have a nuke as well, but putting immediate pressure on this Obstagoon, I'm going to be firing the Ice Beam. Actually let him get a counter through, which is really bad. That actually probably was the last counter he needed for Gunk Shot. And again, fire the Ice Beam, and my opponent shields. So at this point, because of how volatile this matchup is for both parties, my inclination right now is that he's going to be firing the Gunk Shot. It would be really, really brave of him to fire a Night Slash here, because I'm already at another charge move, or almost at another charge move. If he were to fire a Night Slash bait here, he couldn't actually get to the Gunk Shot, so he would have to commit 2 shields. So this is kind of the comfortable part of this matchup. And again, I'm going to call this Gunk Shot, and that's exactly what it is. So now my opponent is energy dry, and I can safely get to this Play Rough, and then now this is where the pressure really starts coming. I can start forcing shields, or I can force the KO, right? So here my opponent is going to continue countering, building up energy, and I go for the Play Rough. So this is where my opponent has to make the decision: do I want to go for the Gunk Shot bait again, or the Gunk Shot again, or do I want to let this go and just live with it? And my opponent, unlike the first opponent, decides that oh, he's not going to shield here, but decides to not shield this attack. And this instant KO here means that he wasn't going to commit to the second Gunk Shot, and he wasn't interested in losing that second shield. So something in the backline for this particular team is either going to be shield dependent, or he's pretty scared of bringing it in, or bringing it straight into an Azumarill. So Obstagoon goes down, and a Galarian Stunfisk comes in. So this is like pretty similar to the first team, right? We have a fighter or a pseudo fighter lead into a Galarian Stunfisk. So immediately I'm thinking there's a flyer in the back, except that this time I have a massive advantage. So there's really no reason for me here to shield this Azumarill anymore, because not only can I get this Galarian Stunfisk pretty low, Earthquake only does about 40% of Azumarill's health, and he would need 2 of them to KO me, which is a pretty tall order, especially because I have a couple of bubbles worth of advantages already, and I have the Abomasnow and the Alolan Marowak in the back. So there's not a whole lot of Pokemon available that are going to be able to 2v3 this team with a shield parity and an energy deficit. So bringing in the Stunfisk here, I'm going to start charging up energy. My opponent does make the correct play, charges up to an Earthquake, and we CMP tie on my Ice Beam versus whatever move that he's throwing. So I think my opponent here, he had a win condition, or he had a potential win condition here, and I think this is a pretty big mistake, because knowing the information that I have already in what he showed me at the beginning versus what my backline is, I'm not going to show anything here. And my opponent goes for the Rock Slide. And I think that this is what ultimately hurt my opponent here, is if he had gone for the Earthquake and actually let that through, then he can start pressuring me with Rock Slide baits. But you need to open with the Earthquake, right? Because that's going to put me in a critical level of health where the Rock Slide can potentially KO. Now I know that I have the options, right? I can either shield the next attack, which if it were an Earthquake, the game would essentially be over at that point, or I can continue to let him Rock Slide bait me and apply pressure with my own Ice Beams. So A little surprised that he did, and we see MP tie here. So I'm gonna fire the Ice Beam here, and I'm gonna try to get a hard read on what my opponent decides to do. And my opponent decides to let it go, which means that the next Ice Beam, along with the bubbles, is going to KO. So here my opponent lets me get another bubble through, and there's another attack incoming. Now this time I know it's definitely a Rock Slide. There's not enough time for him to get to the Earthquake energy, throw the Rock Slide, and get to another Earthquake, right? So this time I'm definitely gonna let it go. And I think my opponent kind of panicked here. Had a shield, probably could have gone for the Earthquake, and decided not to. So Rock Slides me, and I'm gonna get to another Ice Beam. And here my opponent has to make a decision. Does he want to shield this and go for another Rock Slide, or does he want to let this go and bring in his last Pokemon to 1v3? And my opponent decides to shield here. However, all he has is Mudshot right now. So he is energy dry, and he's rebuilding up to another Rock Slide with Mudshots. This is not going to work because the bubbles are going to deal a lot more damage to Galarian Stunfisk, and my health is barely moving, and he brings in his last Pokemon here, which is an Azumarill. It's kind of an interesting composition. I was pretty fixated on the fact that it would be a flyer the whole time, but if it's an Azumarill, this is fantastic. I have Play Rough energy up, knowing that my opponent is carrying a Rock Slide, so very unlikely that I'm going to be shielding anything, unless there's absolutely a good reason to. So here, bring in the Abomasnow. Hard, or not hard counter, but a pretty strong counter to Azumarill. Not a hard counter, doesn't wall it. Still takes a ton of damage from the Ice Beam, and I'm just gonna throw energy right away. So get to the energy ball here. This will one-hit KO the Azumarill, and then I'm gonna be able to threaten this Galarian Stunfisk when it comes in with Powder Snow alone. So he comes in and he wants to throw energy. That's fantastic. We're going to make him throw energy again because I know now that Marowak in the back is going to be able to fire spin down and be able to take the win here. So my opponent does fire more energy that he has saved. This is going to KO the Abomasnow, but now that he's energy dry, this is a very safe win. Okay, Marowak comes in, cleans up, and we go 3-0 to begin the set. Okay, going into the fourth matchup. It's going to be Azumarill into Obstagoon. So we just saw this matchup, and I'm going to play this the exact same way. So again, Obstagoon has to go for these gunk shots, and then also Azumarill is going to be applying pressure first by throwing a potential charge move that can KO it. So I'm once again going to be building up to a Play Rough, and then threatening the health with an Ice Beam, and then having the Obstagoon either choose the gunk shot or let it go. So I'm building up energy here, expecting the gunk shot to come, and my opponent brings in his own Azumarill, and I instantly swap into Abomasnow. So this is a really good position for me. Abomasnow can win the Zero Shield without any problems. However, the way I like to play this, and the fact that I swapped a little bit late, I actually got one extra bubble in on my own Azumarill. I usually throw the energy ball first, not expecting them to shield. And then, depending on the energy scenario, you can one shield, farm down, and leave the matchup with a Weather Ball Ice. So it's going to be the plan here because it's a little bit late. If I swapped instantaneously, probably could have done the energy ball into Weather Ball. So I'm going to shield here. And usually in this matchup, you can charge up to 2 Weather Balls and then throw a Weather Ball Ice to threaten the health. And they're obviously not going to shield. This is a terrible matchup for Azumarill. There's no reason for them to shield. And they're going to let it go. So I'm going to come out of this with a move and a little bit of energy, which is great for me. And then I'm fully expecting the Obstagoon to come in with a ton of energy. And I think he did 5 or 6 counters right there, and he's probably going to commit to this farm down. So let's see. Opponent brings back an Obstagoon. I'm going to throw the Weather Ball right away, just in case the Night Slashes. Unlikely to do that, but if he decided to. And I'm going to go for another Weather Ball Ice. These are non-stab counters, so although it does super effective damage, it is not going to be doing as much as a fighting type would. Go for another Weather Ball here. My opponent still doesn't shield, and now I'm kind of in a tricky spot here because if I come with Azumarill, then he's very likely to throw a Gunk Shot and bail. And I have quite a bit of energy on Azumarill, and I have to make a decision here of whether I want to come in, shield the Gunk Shot, or try to pull a fancy move. So my inclination is that this Obstagoon is probably going to fire the Gunk Shot and then be energy dry. So I try to make a pretty fast swap. And looking back at it, probably didn't need to. Either way, I'm going to have to shield something. So if I call the bait incorrectly, then I'm kind of in more trouble than I should be. So I'm going to come in. I'm going to click on Azumarill and let him come in. And then I'm going to instantly swap to Marowak. So it happens very quickly. You can only do this in the new UI. And I'm hoping to catch a Gunk Shot here. So I'm not going to shield this. And my opponent uses Night Slash. So I'm like, oh god, this is terrible. Because now the only other move that he could have is Night Slash. And because he's built up so much energy, I'm actually at risk of getting hit by a third one. So I am now in a little bit of trouble here. But I do get a Fire Spin through. This is fantastic. It actually probably helps out quite a bit, because I don't think you can store 3 Night Slashes. And now I can Fire Spin this Obstagoon down. So at this point, having a 2-to-1 Pokemon advantage but a 0-to-2 shield deficit, depending on the Pokemon that comes in, you can be in a lot of trouble here, especially because Alolan Marowak is at 2/3 health, and then Azumarill is still at full health, but depending on what they have again, this could be a pretty rough time. But my opponent comes in and it's a Hypno. So I'm going to be counting confusions here. And then on the third one, I actually make a mistake here and let the confusion through. But on his 3rd/4th one, I'm going to be throwing the Shadow Ball here. And again, no reason to bait on Alolan Marowak, because if this bait had failed, he would have had a 2-shot advantage and we would have just barely chipped him, right? So he's at 5, he's at 6. And on the 7th confusion, I have to fire the Bone Club because I'm kind of gauging my health bar here. And I realized that I'm probably not going to survive the 7th confusion, which is a little bit unfortunate. But I'm going to go for the Bone Club here. My opponent does a really good job of counting and it correctly identifies that this is a Bone Club. He's not going to be shielding it. And you can see how little damage it did. So if that was the first bait and he let it through, we'd be in a lot of trouble. And opponent's going to actually throw. So this is good for me because I didn't know he was going to CMP tie right there. And in the long run, the Bone Club actually did help me out a little bit. But I was not expecting my opponent to throw energy. I thought he was going to be committing to the farm down. I think he got probably a little bit scared there, but there's really no reason because he has the shield. And if he was counting the moves correctly and knowing that Shadow Ball would be 6 Fire Spins, he would have been completely safe to farm down. And I think this might have been a major mistake for him. Because if he had carried this energy into the next matchup against Azumarill, probably would have had a good shot to win. So Fire Thunder Punch here does a 0 charge right there. So I actually have does a 0 charge, leaves me a sliver of health. Very smart play on my opponent's part, getting the last confusion in, knowing that the Fire Spin damage is going to be worth it to tank in order to get a confusion in. And I'm going to go down here and I'm going to bring in Azu. So right now, a couple of things are a bit worrisome. First of all, he's at Shadow Ball energy for sure. And I don't know if 2 Shadow Balls would KO an Azumarill. My inclination is that it won't. I think you need the damage from the confusions. So I think my only play here is to go for the Ice Beam and then follow it up with a Play Rough, and then have the subsequent bubble damage be able to take him down. So that's going to be my play here, knowing that my opponent has a ton of energy to blow. And I'm going to come in here. My opponent obviously did not throw there, so as Azumarill would lose CMP. So fire the Ice Beam, he does shield, and now I pretty much know it's a race, right? Had my opponent carried the energy through and made sure to deny my bubbles, he probably could have won this with triple Thunder Punch. But you're going to see right here before I get to the Play Rough, my opponent is going to throw energy. And I think Thunder Punch, I actually thought it would do a lot more, but it winds up doing, about 30%. And my opponent back-to-backs properly, not allowing me to get a fast move through. And he's going to fire another Thunder Punch. And right now, if he had carried the energy from the Marowak matchup into the Azumarill matchup, I think that he had a clear chance to win here. So because I am 2 bubbles away from a play rough, he is 1 confusion. He'd be 1 confusion away from being able to reach another Thunder Punch, and instead I'm gonna be able to get to the play rough just on time. Gonna throw it in the middle of the confusion animation to make sure that he can't CMP, and this is gonna secure the win for me. So yeah, definitely a very close matchup, and it was a lot closer than it should have been because of my mistakes doing that fancy swap. So sometimes in the past, I've been able to kind of trick people or trying to be able to get people by doing a swap like that, because if you see Azumarill, you probably throw in the gunk shot. And you know, had I caught that on Alola Marowak, the game essentially is over at that point. But yeah, probably in the future, I would have come in and shielded Azu, and we probably would have been in a similar spot, but having Azu being able to absorb all that damage from Hypno and potentially breaking shields opens up a lot more play for Alola Marowak to come in and get some work done. So came out pretty lucky with that win, and we're 4-0 in this set. Gonna move on to the last game. Okay, so this is the last game in the 5-0 run. I'm playing another Rank 5, and sometimes I think you find some spicy teams that are out there, and my opponent leads with Crustle. So this team wound up being a pretty interesting team. It was a fun team to play against. I just think if the Pokemon were aligned differently, I probably would be in a lot more trouble than I should have been. But if you guys have played Halloween Cup from 2 seasons ago, you would actually, you would know that this is a terrible matchup for Crustle. Crustle, although having access to Smackdown and Rock Slide, the Azumarill is definitely going to be able to outpace with the neutral damage from Ice Beam and then the bubble damage. So knowing this is a pretty favorable spot for me. The only thing that I'm worried about is what he could potentially have in the back, knowing that this looks like a full Spice team. And if he swaps out, I have to make sure to win switch advantage, because Crustle is going to do a lot of damage to both Abomasnow and Marowak. So right now, the only thing that I'm laser focused on is how do I make sure that my Azumarill is lined up against this Pokemon and this Pokemon only. So let's go ahead and get started. So the one good thing about Azu, I don't have to shield anything on Crustle. And it's really, the pressure is on the Crustle to be able to get off, or try to get off 2 Rock Slides, and my opponent makes an instant swap here, or tries to catch, I think he tries to catch an Ice Beam. I wasn't planning on throwing the Ice Beam, but he brings in a Skarmory. So at this point, I know that I'm going to bring in my Marowak, and I actually overtap Bubble, so right now, like, I shouldn't be farming an extra Bubble. I should be bringing in a Alola Marowak immediately, but I pretty much know at this point that switch advantage can be won, and that I'm going to have to pay attention to this mid matchup here. The only thing that can really swing this matchup is if my opponent gets the Brave Bird and can potentially threaten my health, and my opponent also has to call the correct, has to call Shadow Ball, right? And it really depends on if those 2 factors are met. If he gets the Brave Bird and I do not shield for whatever reason, Skarmory can potentially swing this matchup into a much worse state for me. So I'm going to bring in Alola Marowak, and as I'm farming, one thing that is very strange is I expect Air Slash to deal a certain amount of damage, and if you notice, this is a Steel Wing Skarmory. So I panic a little bit here because I don't know the counts for Steel Wing. Usually it's 5 Air Slashes to a Sky Attack or 8 Air Slashes to a Brave Bird, and I have no idea what the counts are on this Skarmory, so it's a little bit worrisome. I am taking less fast move damage, which is good, but I still don't want to get Brave Bird, right? So get to the Shadow Ball here. I'm going to throw it, and my opponent isn't throwing, so this is making me think that they do want a Brave Bird. So I throw the Shadow Ball, and he does shield correctly. So now I pretty much know that, like, in order to make sure I win this matchup, I probably have to invest at least 1 shield. So my opponent decides to throw here. I instantly go for the shield, because if this were a Brave Bird, my opponent could actually be in a potential position to win switch advantage, which would be pretty awful for me. So here my opponent throws Sky Attack, and as soon as I see that it's a Sky Attack, I now know that I can commit to the farm down very safely. So it's probably one of the reasons to shield right there, because if it was a Brave Bird, I would obviously still be able to farm down without any problems. So the least risky play in that scenario was to throw the shield up. And I probably would end up throwing a shield anyways because Alolan Marowak is not super tanky. It's really hard to tank 2 Sky attacks from Skarmory. And my opponent decides to throw energy here again. Now, I have a good feeling that he probably didn't get to a Brave Bird. So again, Sky attack, you can see does a pretty good chunk of Alolan Marowak's health, but I'm going to be able to come out of this mid matchup, shield parity, massive energy advantage, and I'm going to chuck the Shadow Ball straight into the Crustle that's coming back. So this is good in for a couple reasons. Whether or not this Crustle decides to shield, it is good. It is good for me no matter what, right? Because we've taken out one of the major counters to Abomasnow, and if this person had a flyer in the back, or had a potentially had a flyer in the back, or had something else that was weak to Abomasnow, I know that the biggest counter on the board right now that is, to my knowledge, has been taken out, and I have no problems throwing the Shadow Ball straight in. So I can either get a shield advantage here and have Azumarill come in and clean up, or he can just go down to the Shadow Ball right now. So gonna chuck the Shadow Ball. My opponent smartly decides the shield is gonna farm me down, but I'm gonna be able to throw 1 Bone Club before fainting, and right now have a ton of energy on Azumarill. And at this point, the Crustle the Crustle player, I believe, probably made a mistake here, because if you anticipate Azumarill coming back in and I had to farm all that energy, you probably throw immediately because Crustle does win CMP against Azumarill. However, as I go down, I'm going to go straight for the Ice Beam, and my opponent doesn't throw a move. So at that point, he had enough smackdowns to be able to Rock Slide, and this is going to not end up mattering in this match, but it is crucial that if you have that energy, you have to blind throw something. And kind of knowing that we had Azumarill at the beginning, and then you had Alolan Marowak who was weak to it, the best move you probably throw there is Rock Slide. My opponent doesn't throw, and instead I Ice Beam. And Ice Beam from this health range, doing neutral damage, will KO the Crustle. And all that energy that was put into the shielding, that was put into the farming, is all for nothing. And my opponent's last Pokemon is Umbreon. So in this particular case, it was going to be really tough for my opponent to win switch advantage anyways. But definitely made the right call right there. Skarmory had to come in and basically had to commit to trying to win switch advantage, but unfortunately we had the Marowak. And I think if we would have had Air Slash, it probably would have been a little bit closer, or I would have had to blow more shields. But in this case, this is really unfortunate. Had the Crustle been aligned to Marowak, Skarmory to Abomasnow, Skarmory to Skarmory to Azumarill, Umbreon to Abomasnow, this match is probably over. But instead, my opponent letting that go, and getting farmed down, that was probably the end of it. So right now, I know that with a shield advantage and ability to get to 2 player offs here, even if my opponent double last resorts me, it's not going to matter because I'm going to have a full Pokemon in the back, and I can just go for double player off here. Okay, I'm going to shield here to be safe. If this were a last resort, still deal a good chunk of damage to Azumarill, but it's very unlikely that the Umbreon will be able to outpace, and he actually outplay baits me here. But now that I have used the shield, there's no way that this Umbreon can win this matchup. Just going to throw another move here. This is too quick to be a last resort, so it's another foul play, and I think my opponent just pretty much gave up right here. I'm going to be able to get to the play rough, seal the deal on this 5-0 run. Abomasnow did not even have to come out, and that is going to be a good game. So it's kind of a spicy team here. I was kind of musing a little bit in my Twitch chat at the time, like, you can probably catch a good amount of leads with Crustle in this meta. Obviously, Abomasnow doesn't want to see it, neither does Marowak, but it's probably safer to play something like a Bastodon or a Probopass at this point to be your frontline tank, but still a very interesting team. Can definitely see the cogs turn as my opponent was playing it. But overall right there, being able to win switch was pretty huge. So That's going to lock up the 5-0 set for me. And I'm going to be able to get rank 7 off of this set here. So that's going to conclude this video. Hopefully this in-depth analysis is going to help a little bit more in terms of a player point of view, especially about how I think it's going to probably be the way that my content goes instead of just kind of shoutcasting random matches. Hopefully I bring you guys some more interesting teams. Tonight's stream was kind of full of a lot of fun teams that I played, but after kind of memeing a little bit, I actually played a little bit of a low Momola tonight. I decided to get a little bit serious towards the end, try to make that push to rank 8, but fell just one win short. So yeah, again, gotta stay somewhat serious in this season. I do plan on trying to grind and get as high as I can. Obviously, we want that rank 24, so that's going to require me to play a lot more or a lot better technically, and then also being able to revisit some of these battles and talk through what my thought process was is also going to be a great help. So that's gonna be the end of the video. So if you like this content, feel free to subscribe, like, or share, and yeah, I'll definitely be making more content for GBL Season 6, and I'll see you in the next video.